How big a role does tourism play in Northern Ireland's economy, and is that sort of a growing sector?
It is. It's a very interesting thing about tourism, because obviously when we were going through our difficult political periods in Northern Ireland, our tourist numbers were low. As you can imagine, people do not want to visit an area where they have watched negative press coverage on the television. We have seen a tremendous rise in tourism in Northern Ireland, the economy, over the past 5 to 6 years. For example, in 2003, and I apologise for using a 2003 figure, but we don't have the 2007 final figures yet, we had 2 million overseas visitors to Northern Ireland. There are only 1.7 million people live there, so that gives you some idea of the number of people we're getting in. There's been a significant growth in hotel development in Northern Ireland. We're presently working on 2 new Gulf courses, vacation spots, where one of them in particular is very interesting because you play one of the 18 holes, you play one of them in the Republic of Ireland. So you're there, you tee off in one part of the island, one jurisdiction, and you end up with your ball in the green in the other jurisdiction. Interesting things which Americans in particular would like to do. We have a large number of new air routes into Northern Ireland which we didn't have before. You can fly direct from Newark, New Jersey, direct to Belfast International every day of the week on aircrafts which are increasingly filled with vacation holiday makers. We have flights to into Northern Ireland from Munich, from Paris, from Nice, from Amsterdam. We have now a lot of people coming for what I would call weekend breaks from mainland Europe to see Northern Ireland. In fact, actually, the last figures showed that tourism in Northern Ireland now outstripped agriculture in terms of its contribution to the GDP. Mm-hmm. So yes, the simple answer to the question is that tourism is taking off very significantly. We have a lot of work to do on developing our tourism infrastructure, because obviously during 35 years of political unrest that did not receive the amount of investment that perhaps would have gone into tourism in the Republic of Ireland. But we're beginning to see a tremendous opportunity for growth.
A business delegation that we had from Northern Ireland that visited last September, they were from the Federation of Small Businesses, mm-hmm. and they mentioned at that time that they would like to see greater tax incentives for businesses and simplification of labor laws that they felt would boost the economy. Do you agree with that, and has there been any legislative progress in those areas?
Yes, well, I'll deal with the tax issue first, because I think it's of fundamental importance, and I'm really glad you raised it, because it's an issue which has rumbled on in Northern Ireland for about the past 15 years. The issue around tax is one of, it's really to do with corporation tax, and in the Republic of Ireland they have a very attractive corporation tax rate of 12.5%. For many business people in Northern Ireland, they have continued to lobby for Northern Ireland to have a similar rate of corporation tax, the view being that if we were equal in terms of our taxation rate in both parts of the island, Northern Ireland would be more attractive to particularly American investors who wanted to establish in Europe. And what happened was, just about 6 or 7 months ago, we had a major report, a new report was commenced which looked at the advantages and disadvantages of the current tax regime in Northern Ireland. And just to be really strict and maybe slightly boring about this, fiscal policy is held centrally in London. Mm-hmm. It's not devolved to Belfast, it's not devolved to Edinburgh, it's not devolved to Cardiff. So the British Treasury in London has responsibility for advising on fiscal policy. Sir Richard Varney, the former head of the Treasury, did this very, very detailed report. And the bottom line on that report was that he did not feel that there was sufficient evidence to suggest that Northern Ireland needed this 12.5% tax rate, it was not in itself a major disadvantage for inward investment into Northern Ireland. And why did he say that? He said it for a number of reasons. The clearest one of all was that Northern Ireland actually is a package. When an investor is looking at coming to somewhere like Northern Ireland, they're not just looking at the headline figure of a 12.5% tax rate. They're looking at other things, looking at the availability of labour. They're looking at the availability of highly qualified people leaving our universities. They're looking at the availability of good quality accommodation, whether that's office accommodation or factory accommodation. They're looking at proximity to the major markets, and they're looking at infrastructure. And there's a package there. And what Sir Richard was saying in his report was that if you look at the comparators between Northern Ireland and the Republic, particularly in terms of cost of employing people, the availability of labour, and indeed the cost of office accommodation. Office accommodation costs in Belfast, for example, are about a quarter of the cost of similar quality office accommodation in Dublin. So what he felt and what people have accepted is that you have to look at the overall package which Northern Ireland offers, not just at the headline 12.5% taxation rate. Sir Richard has now gone back to write version 2 of his report, which will look at other fiscal issues, and he will then determine whether or not he will make recommendations to the British government about other possible incentives. So really we feel in Northern Ireland that we have other advantages to offer, and if you add up the math, probably we have just as good a deal to offer irrespective of the taxation issue. To deal specifically with your question on employment law, the Minister for Employment is Sir Reg MP, and he is a very well experienced minister. He's worked in previous administrations, and he also comes from a business background. He's very keen to simplify the employment laws in Northern Ireland. But what you must remember is that we are part of the European Union, and certain directives from the European Union have to be taken into consideration in formulating Northern Ireland law. A lot of work has been done at the minute by a group of consultants, business people, to look at how we could simplify the employment legislation in Northern Ireland to make it more suitable and friendly towards inward investors coming in, but by the same token protect the rights of the employees in that company. And certain of those rights are enshrined in the European Union legislation. But we are looking currently at, number one, how we simplify those regulations. That report should be available later this year. And in addition to that, we are also looking at how we can work much better to quickly resolve industrial disputes. Now, Northern Ireland does not have a great history in industrial disputes in the terms, and that's a positive point I'm making. Very few days in Northern Ireland are lost each year through industrial disputes. We are not a part of the United Kingdom that goes on strike a lot, so we don't have a lot of difficulty. But where we do reach these difficult, intractable issues, we have an agency, an arbitration agency, which is responsible for resolving such disputes, and we're looking at how we could improve that. But really that's almost a secondary issue because it happens so rarely that it's not a major difficulty.